Okay. So this is wild because there's a couple things at play here too. One, I think when you look at this situation with Kehlani Satake, it's almost like this is how you do it, right? Kehlani Satake is, let's say his moral compass is a little stronger than Lane Kiffin's, and he's not so much all about himself, right? That's a reflection in the fact that he was raised and remains a card-carrying member of the Church of Latter-day Saints. It's just a different way of life, right? It's not necessarily a self-absorbed deal. Now, this whole situation, yesterday afternoon, it really starts to percolate. Or I should say Sunday night, right? And then yesterday afternoon, I'm talking to, I'm texting with my man, Todd McShay, who we've had on this show, right? And McShay's basically like, hey, you need, or the Penn State situation is a mess. And he was basically saying like, and he's inferred that on his own show, but he was saying how their AD craft, and I always joke around, right? Like when we start talking about ADs, like it seems like we know a lot. Like yesterday when I'm like, oh, Keith Carter at Ole Miss. Like, I don't know these dudes. I know of them. And obviously Brian Santiago is another figure because he's involved BYU's AD. But the situation at Penn State is messy because their athletic director, Pat Kraft, has really kind of found himself at a crossroads, right? In like a standoff with Jimmy Sexton, who is like the Scott Boras of college sports right now, college football, really in particular. Let's put it at college football. Or like a Lee Steinberg back in the day. He represents, last year, there was a time when Jimmy Sexton represented 15 of the 16 coaches in the SEC. So Pat Kraft gets sideways with Jimmy Sexton when he fires James Franklin, 4 or 5 games into the season. Whether you like that firing, it doesn't really matter. That's what went down. And he got sideways, Pat Kraft did, with Jimmy Sexton. So that is why Chesney, who took the job at UCLA, he's a Jimmy Sexton guy. There are rumors and some innuendo, like the reason that job and that situation never really got too far down the line is because Jimmy Sexton wouldn't allow it to. There was also a lot of stuff where you would hear about Penn State being interested in certain clients or certain coaching candidates that were Jimmy Sexton clients. And then all of a sudden you would hear about that coach renegotiating at his school, right? Well, Kalani Sitake is not represented by Jimmy Sexton, right? And he's like a real outside of the box candidate. If you think about Penn State, Kalani Sitake is a lifetime, BYU guy, right? Played for LaVell Edwards. And we can get into the LaVell Edwards connection coming up here shortly, but that came into play yesterday afternoon. Pat Kraft gets on a plane and goes out to Provo, Sunday into Monday. Kalani Sitake is blown away by the presentation. And from what I heard from folks out in Salt Lake City yesterday, people who I really trust, that like it was basically a done deal. Kalani Sitake scheduled a meeting with his team, was going to tell them he took the job. And then, as my buddy Kevin is calling it on our text thread, Crumblegate begins, right? The CEO of Crumble Cookies actually tweets and was like, some people are not replaceable. It was like a bat signal, right? And we got Drake Toll coming up later on from Locked On Big 12, who can break down Cookiegate for us because it's pretty wild. But apparently there's like an 11th hour meeting with LaVell Edwards' widow, right? Between Kehlani Satake and her. Everyone around the church is rallying. Everyone around the football program is rallying. It really becomes a situation, and we're seeing this more and more in college sports, where it rises above the level of AD Brian Santiago. And now you've got these heavy hitters like our guy from Crumble Cookies getting involved. And it could be Ryan, I'm forgetting his last name, the guy who owns the Utah Jazz, who has put so much money into BYU's basketball experience through Kevin Young. And you see the AJ DeBonsa and the Rob Wright payouts. Like there's a lot of money in the orbit there over at the Church of Latter-day Saints. And there's a lot of really good people there, right? And they got involved because I think, one, they understand how special Kehlani Satake is. And two, they realized how serious he was. This is not the kind of guy, and this is, again, based on reporting by other people. Like, I'm not like in here like Woodward and Bernstein, right, out there pounding the pavement. But I talked to the people who are. And I talked to one of them yesterday, and the thought process was, hey, BYU realized, obviously, and almost too late, that this was a very real situation. Like, Kalani Sitake is not the kind of guy who is going to entertain a job offer to leverage his current position. Now, ultimately, that ends up happening here, right? But truly, that's not who this guy is. Penn State came knocking, and I can tell you, as a guy from southeastern Pennsylvania, that is a powerful knock at the door. And you've got to listen if you're Kehlani Satake. And on the back end of that, you are now getting set to play in the biggest game your university has ever played in 40-some years, since the 1984 Holiday Bowl, talking about BYU. So as you prepare for this, all of a sudden, you've got this crashing into your orbit, a possible opportunity at another university. And by the way, this is fluid. Like, what do I know? I'm just reporting to you what I've heard from everyone else and stuff that I've read. But like, I was told it was fluid, but it looks now like Kalani Sitake is going to stay. But back to what I was saying about the Big 12 championship game, possibly the biggest game in 40-some years for BYU. When you look at this game, right, you have to take into consideration that BYU is playing for a playoff spot with a record of 11-1. And if they don't win this game with 2 losses in a Power 4 conference, they may not get into the college football playoff. Now, if you're Kalani Sitake, you got to be thinking, well, that kind of blows, right? Like, and look, I bleed Big 12, right? But the fact of the matter is that is alluring for someone of Kalani Sitake's ilk that may be sort of handcuffed by the situation he's in and where he's coaching. Now, you win this game, and the conference is going to have to get 2 bids because you can't. Texas Tech is just, they are on fire. And that's one thing that actually I think we'll see Kalani Sitake, or excuse me, Joey McGuire coach against, right? We talked a little bit about this yesterday. Scotty brought it up, that their team, they are so hot and they are rolling right now that you have to make sure, you know, you don't have the born on third base, thought you hit a triple type mentality if you're Texas Tech, right? But BYU is hungry. They're dangerous. This is a neutral site. So there's a real opportunity for them to play in the college football playoff if they can get a win here. And I believe they can get in if they can lose by less than a touchdown. I really do. But the fit overall for Satake going to Penn State is a clumsy one at best, in my opinion. Again, it's a different day and age now, and it's a little more transactional. But as far as, like, you know, for somebody who grew up in that area, I do have a vibe on the type of players that Kalani Sitake would be recruiting. We're talking like Philly, like Allentown, like going on to Western PA. You get into DC, some of the cities around there, but like, it's not the type of player where a Tongan, someone of Tongan descent is just going to parachute into their living room with this background of the Church of Latter-day Saints and is going to like fit right in and connect with these people. Now, maybe Kalani Sitake would do that, right? But this would be a very out of character hire for Penn State. Scotty, you got something to say? Okay. Scotty's he's ready over there, I feel like. All right. It would be an out of character hire. Now, just a couple other things I had written down here. Kalani Sitake does not have like a Jimmy Sexton level agent. And that's one of the reasons why Penn State targeted him, right? Not that they could take advantage of him, but it was a situation where it was a fertile opportunity, right, for a Penn State to get a coach like Kalani Sitake. I'm so surprised that Penn State is having to reach this far for a hire that seems so out of character for this school. Again, you're talking about you're recruiting a lot of Catholics, public school kids, blue-collar kids, just not the type of guy that has been the perfect fit at BYU. By the way, one of the reasons that Kalani Sitake is such a great coach, right, is because he's so aligned with what they're doing at BYU. If he went to Penn State, he would lose that, you know? And Penn State would lose too because they're going to hire a coach in Kalani Sitake who succeeds because of that alignment. And that is the special sauce for BYU. We go back, right? I think they're 23-2 or 23-3 over the last 2 years. That's amazing. And yeah, that's Aaron Roderick, right? Their offensive coordinator. That's Jay Hill, their defensive coordinator. That's Kalani Sitake. That's so many of these great players. But when you look at the facilitation of a situation like last year, and we went over it here ad nauseum on this show, but your best player, and this is not like the honor code, right, which saw Jake Retzlaff get sidelined for what was going to be 7 games. That's all the information we had. He was going to be sidelined for 7 games as a result of breaking this honor code and being accused of sexual assault, which, by the way, it turned out he was not guilty of. But the fact is he had premarital sex, which is a no-no in the church. So he was going to be sidelined for 7 games. He says, nah, I can't do this. I'm going to bounce. I go to Tulane. And then all of a sudden, you've got Bear Bachmeier, who has become this wonderkind this year, one of the best freshman quarterbacks of all time, right? Like, we're talking the best freshman season, at least since Jalen Hurts, when he started out at Alabama. And the list goes on, but it's very short. And now Bear Bachmeier's on it. Like, that facilitation comes because of a guy like Kalani Sitake, right? A similar situation like that happens at Penn State. And I don't know that you have the connectivity and the belief from the players into you and you to them to make something like that happen. I just don't know that fit is there for Kalani Sitake at Penn State. And all things being equal, it does look now like he is going to stay at BYU. Again, it's a fluid situation. It could change. Drake Toll will join us later on. And Drake is like, first of all, listen, I'm telling you, listen to Locked On Big 12. Drake is about to make a huge career move, by the way. Huge. Like, if you don't know who Drake is, he's the nudnik that wears the fur coat for the Savannah Bananas, right? A dude from Arkansas that we got to know, I got to know very well in Central Texas, right? He is electric. And I listened to his show this morning after texting with him. And he's got the goods on all this stuff because he's similar to me, but he's better as far as, you know, we don't break the news, but we react to it. And we talk to people who know more than us. So Drake will kind of clear some of this up, but it's very clear that yesterday afternoon, the bat signal was thrown up in Provo, Utah. And with that bat signal being thrown up, Batman or Crumble Man or Cookie Man showed up. And it seems like all this has been alleviated. But it was so close to the point that I'm hearing a meeting was scheduled for the players for Kalani Sitake to tell them, I am leaving and going to Penn State. And that meeting was canceled. And if you saw yesterday afternoon, again, such a different moral compass than our boy Lane Kiffin, who we love and is probably, I think, the most famous coach right now in college sports. You could say like Pitino and Calipari maybe, and maybe Danny Hurley. But, like, he's up there, dude. And, you know, Satake was asked about this yesterday during their Big 12 championship availability. And he just, like, shut it down. He's like, we're talking about the game. And, like, he's not a Lane Kiffin in a sense where people respected that. And now you see a couple hours later, the situation was fleshed out. We will find out later in the day what the deal is. But we're recording our Big 12 show, our special for ESPN, for the Big 12 championship preview. I would hope by the time we tape that on Thursday that we can say, because we're gonna interview Kalani Sitake and we're gonna interview Joey McGuire, and I would like to ask him, hey, like, what's your thinking on this? And I would hope that it's as easy as we give him the opportunity to just shut it down. He'll probably have talked to people like Pete Thamel before Pete Souza gets to him, but you get the idea. It'd be nice to see him shut this down before they play the biggest game in the history of that school since Robbie Bosco was under center. All right, we're going to break now. We got Gary Danielson coming back. Scotty keeping us honest on the time. But the Pete Souza show rolls on. We're so pumped to be with you today. Thanks for joining us. We got tomorrow, we have more folks coming on to preview the Big 12 championship between Tech and BYU. And then Thursday, we got Chad Brown, Colorado guy, and he's calling the Big Ten championship and as an analyst for Compass Media. And then Friday, I think we're working on Robbie Bosco, thanks to Chris Visser. But we're going to step aside. We'll come back with Gary Danielson.